Good morning. It is good to be with you guys. I am very, very excited, thankful for the invitation and the opportunity to be with you. Let's go ahead and start with a song. And if you have the songbooks, it's 47. If you don't, it's a very simple song, so we probably sing it by memory. But God is so good. Just to get warmed up a little bit this morning. No, God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. Jesus is real. Jesus is real. Jesus is real. He's so real to me. He saved my soul. He saved my soul. He saved my soul, and He made me whole. I praise His name. I praise His name. I praise His name. He's so good to me. All right.
Are we going to warm up like we did?
We are. Well, not quite the extent. So in Oklahoma, there's a series of vocal warm-ups that we go through every morning. It ends in a back rub for everybody. Not going to do that this morning. I didn't have that planned. Sorry. You've got to come to Oklahoma to get that treatment. But we are going to do a few warm-up exercises when it comes to song leaders. But I want to start out, first of all, just with the idea that this is a workshop class. If you have questions, if I say something that you don't understand, that is not clear, or maybe you've got a question that I don't address and we get to the end of the session about what we're talking about and you've got an extra question, let me know. We've got 3 hours this morning, and I want to make sure you get the value out of it, and that we answer your questions and help you as much as we can. The first hour, the plan is to go over rhythm and go over specifically when we're talking song worship leaders, talking about our hand movements and how we figure out what hand movements we use, how to kind of make it concise and clear, and how we communicate that way to the congregation. In the second hour, we're going to talk about pitch and finding our starting notes, understanding the keys of the song, and just some kind of basic things there. And then the third hour, we're going to talk about worship and in particular, how to strive for excellence as a song worship leader and how to be an effective song worship leader. So that's going to be some things we talk about in the third hour. So if we don't get to one of those topics in the first hour, we'll probably hit it later. But again, if you have questions, feel free to bring them up. So, and the ladies who are here, thank you for being here. Very, very thankful for your voices, your participation. And I encourage you, if you're comfortable, participate in the activities as we are practicing hand motions and things like that. Feel free to participate. I know Everly was in Oklahoma this year, my daughter, and she can lead a pretty good song. She's got some skills there. But she also understands what the song leader is doing when they're using their hands, and that's a big part of it. So hopefully that's something you can gain from this morning as well, along with encouraging those who are here who are working on their song worship leading. All right, I'm asking everyone go ahead and stand up. Let's stretch out a little bit. If you need to get some space between you. I want to talk about posture, okay? Before we get started, talk about posture, because if we're up here leading God's people, we need to have a leadership posture. We need to stand up straight, look like we want to be followed, and not shrink behind the podium and not be seen. We want to stand up straight, and we want to think about being visible but invisible. if that makes sense. We don't want the focus to be on us. We, as song worship leaders, we don't want the focus to be on us. We want things to be very, very clean and concise and communicate what we need to communicate, but without having us be the main show. So we want to stand up straight. When we use our hands, we want our hands to be about face high. And you have a perfect setup because face high is about the same eyesight to the screen up here. So if you put your hand up here, people are going to see it all the way up to the screen. So the proper hand-arm position, if you put out, you want your elbow here, slight bend in your elbow, your arm out to where people can see it, and a flat palm. That's going to be kind of the standard. And when we beat time, when we move our arms, we want to try to move from the shoulder so that we're keeping our arm firm and visible, right? The alternatives, we can do this. We can move from our elbows, but the arm is going to be stronger. You're going to get stronger beats. You're going to be more consistent, and people are going to be able to see a little bit better. And that's what we're doing. That's the whole point of using our arms and communicating in that way, is we want people to be able to follow clearly. So a couple, let's see, is it the green button here? There we go. All right. So a couple, there's three main motions that we use as song worship leaders. The first one we call the duple or the two beat. And it's simple, but it's actually probably one of the more complicated ones to put into practice when we're singing a song that requires it. But it's very simple to go. You go straight down, 1, and then up, 2. 1, 2, right? Down, up, down, up, down, up. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. All right. Notice when you look at the diagram and there are no loops, there's no real, flowery accents. It's very simple. Every beat every arm motion that we have, every time you come down on one, and I'll explain what that means, but every time we come down on one, you're coming straight down. So it's a very simple 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? Keeping it simple and concise, everyone knows where the beats are, they know where to expect the beats, and things like that. And I want to also caveat here, is we're talking about beat patterns. This isn't the only way to do it, but in my opinion, it's a better way to do it. And if one of the things I try to encourage congregations when I have groups of all the song leaders or most of the song leaders together is if everybody selects one way to do it, the congregation can follow and have that consistency. So I try to have everybody work together to find, if it's not this way, find a way that clearly communicates it and that everybody is on the same page on and all are working towards, so that it can help people worship as different leaders are there. All right. Again, notice the consistency down on one. Every time you go up, it'll be the last beat of the measure, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And then before I move on from this spot, I'll catch that in a second. Sorry. Duple Triple. So when in a 3-beat song, instead of going down and up, we're going to throw an extra beat in there. So it's going to be down, out, up, down, out, up. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, down, out, up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and stop. All right. And then we've got the quadruple or the 4-beat pattern. And it looks more complicated than it is. And all we're doing, we're taking the same thing we had, but we're going in first. So we're going down, in, out, up. Down, in, out, up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right. So if you notice through these again, downbeat is always 1. The last beat of the measure is always up. So any time signature you're in, any song that you're leading, it's going to be consistent. If you're starting a new measure, you're always going to be up and then down on that first beat. And again, we'll talk about that. Let's talk about real quick ending a song before I move on into rhythm, just because since we're talking about directing. Nothing flowery needs to happen, no accents. If you're beating, all you have to do at the end of a song is hold it and stop. That's it. It doesn't need any extra. There's several methods. You can grab it, you can tie it in a bow, you can do all sorts of things. But the simplest, most concise way to communicate it is hold it. And a song there, you can hold that last note as long as feels appropriate, and then stop. And that clearly communicates it. And again, if everybody's doing that, everything's about simplicity and eliminating distraction. All right, you guys can go and sit down. We'll practice that a little later throughout the day. Also, lost my page. So you guys have a book that the elders have purchased. And I totally lost my page on where that was. All of the page 77. Try to put page numbers on all these slides so as we're going through, you can follow along in the book. Because one of my goals, I'm only here for 3 hours, but I'm leaving you with the book. So one of my goals is that you have the tools to be able to look in this resource book, and you'll be able to lead any song by that we have out of the things in this book. So the conductor beat patterns are all on page 77. Again, we'll talk about some of the things as far as the key signatures and how we determine those things as we move forward, but I wanted to give you that resource as we go through. So let's talk a minute about improving as worship leaders before we dive into the real technical, musical stuff that we're going to talk about. Remember our goal. Our goal as song worship leaders is to, well, let me ask you, what is our goal as song worship leaders?
To lead the congregation in glorifying God.
Yeah, absolutely. To lead the congregation in glorifying God. To lead the congregation in song worship. That's as a song worship leader, that is our goal, is to lead them in glorifying God. And I want to suggest to you, and we'll talk about this towards the end of the day, that is a great responsibility. It is a serious responsibility if you have God's people and you're leading them in their worship. And it's something that we need to take seriously. We're going to spend most of today focused on the music, focused on beat patterns, rhythm, pitch. But we always need to have this in the back of our minds, because none of this matters if we are not trying to lead God's people in worship. And that's all this is a means to an end in that way. And that's our ultimate goal. Psalm 34, verse 3 is one of my favorite psalms. "Will magnify the Lord with me, and let's exalt his name together." What are some of the more important words here? What are the key words in this verse that stand out to you?
Magnify together the Lord and me.
Yeah, magnify the Lord, me together, all of that, right? Magnify, what does it mean to magnify?
Enlarge or make great.
Yeah, to enlarge, to make great, right? So if we are magnifying the Lord, what are we doing?
We're making him greater for us to see. For us to consider.
Exactly. Yeah, we are making him greater. So I want us to think about that as worship leaders. How are we, number one, magnifying the Lord ourselves in our lives and everything that we do, but how are we helping God's people magnify the Lord together? What are we doing to help people magnify the Lord? The second focus, the Lord, right? That's kind of an obvious one, but he's our focus, right? It's not us, it's not the congregation, it's not anything else. We are focused on the Lord, and we need to do everything we can to eliminate the distractions that keep the Lord out of our focus. As a song worship leader, there's a lot of distractions that can go on, and so we need to try that. And then the idea of together, right? And worship with me together. Song worship is really unique. It's one of the only activities that we do in our worship service that we all actively participate in. And we are all blending our voices and using harmony and music. And our goal is to lead everyone in worship together. Start a song at the same time, end a song at the same time, and keep everyone together throughout that. And that means clearly giving a starting pitch so everybody knows where they're going to start. Clearly communicating with our arm and with our facial expression so that people are able to stay together. Giving a preparatory beat when we start so people can all take a breath with you and start together and things like that. We want everything we do to be able to be followed by God's people so that they can stay together, they can worship together, and ultimately magnify the Lord. So I just wanted to start things out to kind of set the stage and what we're trying to do. And this is one aspect of it. All right, so we're going to talk about rhythm a little bit. And I wanted to use the song Son of My Soul as a quick example to break down some of the things we're going to talk about. 17 in the book if you need a closer look at it. But let's look at some basic terminology here when we're talking about rhythm and beating a song with our hands. What are some of the things we're going to look for? There's a lot of things up there, a lot of different pieces. So the first thing I want us to look at is the time signature or the meter signature. Okay, this is the most important thing when we're considering our rhythm and figuring out how we're going to use our arms to direct. So time signature is those two numbers that are stacked at the beginning of every song. Every song has one. You can flip through the book. Every single song is going to have two numbers stacked above them. And what that means, the top number tells us how many beats are in a measure. So in this case, it's 3 beats are in a measure. Okay? And then the bottom number tells us what value of note, what value of note gets the beat. And so if there's a 4 on the bottom, the quarter note gets the beat. And I'll explain that in a second. But the quarter note gets the beat. So in this case, there are 3 quarter notes in every measure, right? 3 quarter notes get the beat in every measure. The vertical lines that we see throughout the song here, the small vertical lines, are called measure bars. They divide up the song into measures. So the top number tells us there are how many beats in a measure? 3. So there are 3 beats between each of those measure bars, okay? And it divides it up. The measure is the space between those bars. So just kind of breaking it down when we're talking some of the terminology, the measure is the space between the bars. There's 3 beats in that measure. Beats are basically the pulsation, the feeling of the song. And how quickly we're holding the notes. It's how we count time in music. It's how we count time when I'm going through 1, 2, 3. Those are the beats that we are counting. And we'll look at the beat values in a moment. But in this case, there's 3 beats in every measure again. There are I'll hold off on that. Let's count this together. So we're going to start 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. So that's how we would count through this song, and a very simple song to start with. But that's how we would look at that. Again, notice in our beat pattern, every beat. Do I have this on? Yeah, so every beat every first beat of the measure is where our hand would come down in the beat pattern. So as you're looking along, the first note to the right of a measure bar is going to be that first beat. So let's lead this together. Well, first let's do what we did, but let's count together and make sure all of our hands are coming down on that first beat. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, and we'll stop there. All right, and let's go ahead and lead this together. No, Son of my soul, thou Savior dear, it is unminded good. You feel how the beats are working with your hand and how they're corresponding with the words. Another exercise you can do is if you're before you even introduce the singing of it, you could say it in rhythm. You could if you're practicing and learning a new song. I do that a lot in my head. I'll kind of go through the words in my head. Son of my soul, the Savior dear, right, and get a feel for that particular song. Yes.
I remember when I was first trying to learn how to do the beat, that sometimes in a song, especially a difficult song, I lose track. And so what helped me was maybe if really playing or not. But if you get lost, just go back to, okay, after the first note after the measure, start back going down. So if you're all messed up, just wait till the first note after the measure starts, and then go down, and then you're back on track.
Very good point. Yes. Yeah, very good point. And that is a great memory tool and the way to get back on track. And in the meantime, and one of the things I failed to mention, in the meantime, there is nothing wrong. We're talking about beat patterns. There is nothing wrong with leading a song, Son of my soul, right? And if you get off, I did this last night. I got off somewhere and I just started beating until I could feel that first beat and then moved on. So what you don't want to do is go, you're going along and figure out, and you don't know where you're at, and you leave everybody hanging. You don't want to just stop leading, right? You don't want to look frustrated. You keep beating until you find that. And if you finish the song like that, no one will know the difference, and everybody will have been able to continue worshiping, right? So
I was going to say the exact same thing, because that's what I do whenever I get lost. I just beat down.
yes, yeah, exactly. So you can look at this like a roadmap, right? So if you're trying to figure out where, when you get lost, that first note after that measure bar, you're always coming down. So that should help you kind of get back into your rhythm.
Matt, I do have a question about the in the last note on it. So should we beat through that, or should we hold on that?
So my rule of thumb, and
Can you just repeat the question?
oh yes. Yes, absolutely. So the question was, on the last beat of the song, do you hold it when you're beating it, or do you go ahead and beat it out? My rule of thumb there, if it's one of the first three verses and you're continuing on to the verse, I usually will beat that out, but not always. It's completely, the correct answer is it's song leader discretion. If you want to hold it. If you want to beat it out, beat it out. Some songs, they lend themselves to just going right into the first verse. Some songs, it's good to pause and take a breath, reflect on what you just sang, and then restart back over on the first verse. So the correct answer is it's song leader discretion. I tend to, if I'm just going to the next verse, I'll beat through, and then the last verse I'll hold. The only difference to that is if you have moving parts. On this song, everybody stops on the same note and holds it, and you can just hold them. If you've got an alto that is moving, or a tenor that's moving, you need to give them those beats where they're finishing. And that's as you progress and have another level, that's where you can bring in a second hand. You can hold them and beat out the other one if you would like, or you can just beat it out. Either way, but you want to give anybody who's moving, you want to give them that direction so that they stay together. Does that help? All right. Any other questions? All right, so we got 5 notes that we need to memorize when we're thinking about rhythm, and we're talking about beat values and how long we hold these notes. And this is just something that we visually memorize and work on identifying. This is on page 73, I believe. There's a breakdown of this in your book if you are following along. So we're looking at the fundamentals of rhythm. First, we start with a whole note. I like to think of it like a whole pie. You've got a big circle, and it is your whole pie. The whole note is identified by this open note. It's not filled in. It's just a circle, and no stem or anything attached to it. The whole note can be cut in half by adding a stem to it, and then you have 2 equal half notes. Okay. If you add a stem to a whole note, you have 2 equal half notes, and they each get half the value of the whole note. If we color in that half note, now that divides it in half again, and now we've got 4 quarter notes. And so a colored in note with the stem is a quarter note. We can divide it in half again by adding a flag to it. And so each one of these, again, notice we will be holding them less amount of time. Each one is half the amount of time as the one before. And so in one whole note, how many quarter notes would equal that? 4, right? How many eighth notes in a quarter note? 2, yeah. So it's fractions, right? And that's really what it boils down to. And it just, every time you add a different piece to this puzzle, it halves it. It is half the value. You hold it for half. If you add 2 flags, you get 16th notes. And when you're singing those, you better just move on. You're not holding those at all. So these are the 5 main notes you're going to see in our hymnal. You'll see these, and basically what I want you to know, that there's a lot more technical things, but I want you to know is the relationship between them. Is the half note, you have a whole note, you divide it in half, you divide it in half again, and they correspond that way. And the rhythm of the song is made up of different combinations of these, right? So you can have a whole note in one measure, you can have 2 half notes in the next measure, you can have a whole note or a half note and 2 quarter notes, right? It's just combined of all of these. In fact, if I can go back, is it the red button here? Maybe. So if we look at Son of My Soul, we've got the first line. How many quarter notes do we have? 3, right? How many quarter notes do we have in the second measure? 3 in the third measure. And then what do we have in the fourth measure? Dotted half. I didn't talk about that yet. But yes, it's a dotted half. That basically that's going to be 3 equal to 3 quarter notes. And so we'll get there because that's the very next thing I had. I went back early. All right, so notes and rests. Again, we have our whole note that is the circle. Each whole note has its own corresponding rest, right? So the whole note and the rest looks just like that. It's got the little black box there. You've got the half note, and it's got its corresponding rest. The whole note rest sits below the line, like a hole. The half note rest sits like a hat on top of the line. Is a memory.
Does it matter where it's sitting? Is that important?
It'll almost always be written like it is there. I mean, as long as you see that symbol.
Why couldn't it be in F or A? Or...
Yeah, it's one of those arbitrary rules that no, it could be anywhere, but usually it's written like this.
Both in C.
Yeah.
The next one is okay.
Yeah, and basically all the rest is it just says don't sing. Right, so you've got a note you're singing, the rest you don't sing. So it technically means no note here, right? And so you got your half rest. The quarter note has its corresponding rest. The quarter rest, again the same value, and then the eighth note and its corresponding rest. You've got the little symbol there, and the 16th note has its rest. So again, just when you see those, they have the same value, but one tells you to sing, one tells you to not in the music there. Now, if we go to 412 in the book, and I don't think I have this one up here yet, do I? No. God is love. What rests do we see? We've got quarter note at the end of the first two lines. We've got whole rest. The bass and tenor have whole rest for that entire third line there. And then we've got whole rest down in the chorus along with those quarter rests. Yeah, so you can see how, these signify no singing, and they have their own symbols there.
What's that ampersand in the middle of the page?
On the fourth, yeah. So that is a roadmap, and I'm gonna. So basically, when you're singing this song, you go down, and I'm not just so you go down to the DS down at the bottom,
Yes, sir.
and then the roadmap tells you, okay, you go to the S, right, and then you sing till Fine there. So that's the roadmap directions for the song, and there are technical terms to that flew out of my mind while I was talking about it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah.
Fine. I was like, that's fine.
Yeah, fine. We're done. Fine. That was good. Good enough. All right. All right. Then, so what Tim talked about a minute ago. Now, if you add a dot to the note, it adds a half. So when we added a line, it cut the value in half. When you add a dot to it, it adds half of that value to it. So you've got a whole note that, let's say, for sake of ease, it's worth 4 beats, right? You've got a half note that is worth 2 beats, but if you take a half note and add a dot to it, it's worth 3 beats, right? So it's sitting in the middle. It adds half of that value. And to the rest, does the same thing. Does the same thing to the quarter note. You add a dot to it, and now instead of holding a quarter, a 1 beat, you get 1.5 beat, right? Or 1 and an eighth, 3/8. You've got the eighth note, you add a half of that value to it, and a 16th note, you add half of that value to it. Not many of those, but all of that to get technical, but all of these notes have relationships between them, and it's just a way to identify those relationships as we go through.
Can you go back one slide?
Yes.
If you were talking about this, that's fine. So the rest, though, how do you know how much the word rest?
So
Depending on the note before?
So the rest, it's memorizing the symbols. So if you've got the squiggly line for the quarter rest, it's going to be the exact same value as a quarter note. So if you've got a rest, a quarter note, a rest, a quarter note, and a quarter rest, that would be your 4 beats for a measure. And so you would sing, rest, sing, rest.
So whatever value the quarter note has, the quarter note rest has the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
And a quarter note is always a quarter note. And it's not what's coming before it.
Right,
It's
right.
just always a
So
quarter.
then the third rest up there, just this dash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the half.
Half note?
Yeah, so that's the half note and the half rest.
Okay.
And they have the exact same value. So if you,
Dotted half rest, is that what you said?
The one before it's a dotted
The one before it.
yes. So if you go back to God is love, and you see, let's take that last measure of the first line where come let's all unite to sing God is love. You've got a dotted half note that is going to get 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, and you've got a quarter rest that's going to get that other beat. So it's going to be worth a quarter of that measure. So that is so you can tell by if you're looking at the measures and I've got 3 beats and then I've got one rest there. You can tell that, but really it's looking at the symbols and knowing. So each of these note values has a corresponding rest value.
Is there any easy way to remember? Did anybody work up some sort of
I have some
memory tool?
flashcards at home. I can do.
Yeah. I mean, page 73, where it's written. I've got notes written all over mine. That is a good cheat sheet if you're looking in a song and you come across one that you don't know.
But you're going to keep these books, so feel free to put your name on the front so you know what yours, and then write in it. You're going to take it home. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was gonna say, when I was taking piano lessons, the whole rest is so heavy, it hangs down. So, and the half rest is lighter, so it stands up.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's a great way to remember it. And yeah, there's a bunch of little tricks like that you can kind of work yourself and figure out. But once you start getting into it, and I'll say this, it actually helps me to use my hand when I'm going through figuring out the rhythm, because I know where my hand's supposed to be. And so if I'm trying to say, okay, God is love, okay, I know my hand is going to be moving for 3 beats on that note. God is love, rest, right? So that can help at least me when I'm working through the rhythm if I'm going through using my hands. Good questions. Any other questions there? All right. We're going to move on and talk about the time signatures a little bit and what those mean. And we've got first category of time signatures is what we call simple time. And simple time signatures have a 2, a 3, or a 4 on the top. What is the top number? tell us about the time signatures? How many beats are per measure? So we're looking at simple time where there's either 2 beats in a measure, 3 beats in a measure, or 4 beats in a measure, okay? We call that simple time. And the bottom number tells us what?
And because the first few are, actually the first one is 2, it's the half note gets the beat.
Absolutely, yes. So so the bottom number tells us what note gets the beat, and so we've got in the top example 2 over 2, 2 beats per measure. The half note gets the beat. The 2 means the half note, and so in this case, notice there are 2 half notes in every measure, right? So as you go through that song, there's going to be 2 half notes worth of beats in every measure. Now there could be a half note and 2 quarter notes, but the beat is still 1, 2. It's counting those half notes. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Then we go to the 2/4, where we've got 2 beats per measure, but the quarter note, the 4 quarter note gets the beat. And so in this case, instead of half notes, you've got 2 quarter notes in every measure. And again, that can be divided up, and it could be 1 half note in that whole measure as you're holding those 2 quarter notes. It could be 4 eighth notes, but there are 2 quarter notes that are in every one of those measures. And when you're looking at 2/2 versus 2/4, there's not a lot of difference in how you lead them, and other than generally 2/2 songs are maybe a little slower because they're the half notes, right? And whoever wrote that song, they put it in 2/2 for a reason. That was their interpretation of that song, and so you might lead a little slower. Not always, but you might lead a little slower. 2/4, you might lead a little quicker, but you're going to use the same beat pattern for both of those songs. 3/2, the same way. You've got 3 half notes in a measure. 3 beats in a measure, the half note gets the beat. 3/4, 3 beats in the measure, quarter note gets the beat. Yes, sir.
So how do you know how long a note takes? Like, just take the top 2. You got 2 half notes in the first one, 2 quarter notes. Do they get the same amount of time of your voice?
Yes. So in a given song, let's take the top line. If we're going in a 2/2 song, and we set out a tempo where we're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2. That is the value of a half note. So it's going to be 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way through. Yeah.
I mean, that's just, you just got to memorize that's how long that half note takes to
Yes.
sound.
Could you lead it faster if you wanted?
You can, yeah. It all depends on your tempo. And so as a song leader, you have that discretion. You can go 1, 2, 1, 2, and that could be a very fast 2/2 song.
The only problem that's going to cause when you get a quarter note.
Exactly. Yes.
Those quarter notes.
Yeah.
It's relative.
It's all, and that's what I'm trying to get across. Is it's all relative, and it's all based on how fast the tempo of your song, and the and how the tempo you set, and it's all relative. Absolutely, that's a good way to put it. Did you? Okay. So I will say we will get to tempo in a little bit, but does 2/2 or 2/4 do the time signatures tell us exactly how fast to sing the songs? What should give us some indication on how fast we sing the songs, or how slow we sing the songs?
The content.
Right.
Yeah,
The words in Latin.
it's in Latin. Yeah. So the key signatures can give us some guidance, right? If it's written in 2/2, it might be slower. We might consider that. But the key to determining how quickly or how slowly or how loudly, how softly, anything that we do with our song is the content. And we want, as song worship leaders, we want to bring out the content of a song. And so we may choose to sing a song more slowly than others may, or to bring out a certain emotion there, or a certain thought, or more quickly. But it's up to the song leader discretion and based on the content that we have there. Good.
Man,
Yep.
I'm going to go back.
Yeah, no, please.
Question I buried.
Please, yeah.
But I'm going to bring it up now. So I have a handicap leading anything where you have the half note, like 2/2. So I typically lead it in 4, get the tempo right. What's your feelings on that? I mean, it's just a handicap. I can't feel the beats right.
Yeah. the correct answer is when you lead it incorrectly, like or when you lead it with 4, not with a duple, you're going to lose some of the feeling with the notes to the note values. It's not going to flow quite like, you know.
Metrically strong beat in the wrong place.
Yeah. But my answer is that if it keeps everyone together and you're not getting lost and you're confidently going through that, it's the right way to do it. So I've led 2/2 songs beating it differently, right? And I've led 3/4 songs in compound time, right? I've led, you know, it to get different feels.
Last night I watched you do it. I'm going, I can't do that.
And that's why I said, remember when we were doing the beat patterns, the two pattern is one of the hardest patterns to actually do, because especially a slow 2 beat, because there's nothing for your arm to do. You go 1, 2, right? And it's just hanging out there. And there's no, you've got, and so it really takes practice in mental, like figuring that out. But there's nothing wrong with going like that. You're just there are some songs you're gonna have to be conscious with the lyrics and how they match up, because when we're going through this and you notice it, when you're using your arm, there's an emphasis on the first beat of every measure with lyrics. And so if you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, you're missing some of the emphasis that might happen with those lyrics. Not always, but sometimes.
Would it be better to just do the basic beating of not even differentiating?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could, and sometimes in 2/2 I do that, where I'll just pat it slowly instead of have to worry about where my hand is. I'll just kind of do a more controlled 2, 1, 2, you know, something like that, to where I'm taking that out of the equation, like what is my hand doing, and I'm just kind of keeping that beat. Does that help a little bit?
Can you beat those first 2 lines so we can see the difference between how fast you're going for 2/2 and 2/4?
Sure, yeah. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But again, we have to look at these as completely separate songs. So, you know, that wouldn't be the exact correlation if I were going to, let's say there's a 2/2 song and there's some quarter notes in that song, it would be 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, right? So you'd have the half beat, half note, and then the quarters, then they stay in that same tempo and that same rhythm. Is that making sense? Is that helping?
You don't make this the standard for how fast the song is going. It's just a guide to let you kind of know.
Yeah, and it's less to do with tempo and more how the song feels. How the song feels internally, and I just hit the mic. But where, you know, a 2-beat song, 1, 2, it's got a certain feel to it. A 3-beat song, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 4-beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so really, the tempo isn't so much affected, but it's how the song feels and where you're feeling those beats. And again, when it gets to the lyrics, where the emphasis is on those words is you're going through. Does that help? Yes, sir.
Something on to what I was actually going to ask a question based on what you just mentioned. The way you direct how soft or how hard you go to the beats, wouldn't that also be affected based on the style and the feel of the song in particular?
Yes, and I'll get to that, especially in this the next session when we get to compound time, because there is a lot more than we can do than just with our hand, but with our voice we can add some inflection and accents to words that help people stay together and also help add some understanding to the song as well. So there's some things we can do, and I'll mention that in just a second. Yes, you have?
You'll probably get to this later, but also whether the song is in a major or minor key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whether a song's in a major or minor key does have effect on how we lead it and how we interpret the lyrics, right? Because it can completely change. And there are minor songs that we can sing fast, and there are some songs that we can sing slow. Certainly. Was there? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm still trying to distinguish the top 2 lines. Could you show us the beats for 2/4?
we will do, for any song that has two on the top, so 2-2 or 2-4, it's going to be that duple pattern, and we're going to come down on 1 and up on 2 for every one. So whether it's a 2-2, if it's 2-2, down on 1, up on 2, down.
There's really no difference. Okay.
No difference in how you lead it at all. It's just the tempo we're talking about and how long those notes are. So if there's a 3 on top, 3-2 or 3-4, you're going to use the triple beat pattern. Down, out, up, down. And then the quadruple, down, in, out, up. Yes, sir. Oh, yes.
I was just gonna say, like, would subdividing, like, the beats kind of help, like, with that? Because, like, I know whenever I'm looking at a odd time signature, like, it helps me to, like, subdivide the beats and, like, think that way.
Yeah, and that's where kind of when we're counting and doing the one and things like that, you kind of get that feel. Also, I'll throw this in there. You probably noticed me do it last night a little bit, but when I lead songs that are slower and kind of in that 2-2 space and the slow 2 beat, a lot of times I'll add an extra beat in with my hand, not noticeably, but 1, 2, kind of a little hitch in there just to kind of, because a lot of times in 2-2 songs there are moving parts because it's a slower song and it kind of gives some extra direction that might not be there if you're just kind of padding. But again, there's some things that as you're going through songs and figuring out how they're, how they work. Any other questions here? Yes.
Were you planning to take a 10-minute break at 9:50?
We can, yeah, absolutely.
We're recording these sessions, help us to cut it off.
Yeah.
And then start the recording.
That's fine. This is a good place to stop if you want to. Yeah.
Oh, you might, but I'm just saying it would be good to
Okay, I tell you what. Let me do. Let's see. What else do? I think we've covered. No, this is a good time, and we're at just about 9:50. So if we want to take a break, take a 10-minute break here, and we'll finish up this section and go into pitch and the next, and we'll be good.
very good.
Yeah.